we'll talk about this because it came out. Fightful reported today that women on the Fightful reported today that women on the main roster are currently frustrated with how booking has been going, and they don't see themselves being booked properly, all that nonsense. And the only thing I have to say before I toss it to you is that they're not wrong. It has been a little weird, a little wonky.
Mm-hmm.
The matches that they're in just feel like matches competing for either a number one contendership, a title, or just to fill time.
Yeah.
They do have one of the best women's divisions, if not the best women's division in all of wrestling right
Mhm.
now. Most depth for sure. Most deep for sure.
Most deaf.
The most
Most
depth.
deaf.
Most
Most
depth.
deaf.
Most deep roster. So they should be utilized in the best way possible. Look at what HBK has been doing with the women of NXT. They basically take up the entire show. They main evented the show last week. So I'm with them. I hear them. The issue, the counterpoint I will make is that it's WrestleMania season, so a lot of the bigger stuff is going to get more time, and it's gonna get more attention, which sucks that has to be the way of the wind.
Um, yeah, we've talked about this, especially with the mid card, because I think obviously for the most part, the the women's champions have been pretty treated okay. I would say. Obviously, I have my issues with Liv Morgan's title reign, how it went, how it was, and then how it ended. But she was on television every week, so it's like to a certain extent, it's like, can you really complain? I don't know. Nia Jax was whatever. Obviously, we all wanted to see it on Tiffany, so we're happy about that. I think in general, yeah, it feels like a lot of the women's matches are exhibition matches. That's the word I like to use because it feels like they're just competing for nothing. And that's part of the problem with people winning the Royal Rumble and then they choose who they're facing so early, because then it's like, all right, we're only in February and we already know who's facing who for some of the matches. And so now they're not going to get involved in any other story in the lead up to Mania, because what's the point? Because I know they'd be like, oh, it's Charlotte versus Tiffany, as long as Tiffany's still champion at Mania. And it's like, when have we ever seen that change? They're not going to advertise a match that they're not going to follow through on unless something like crazy happens.
Mm-hmm.
I think the bigger issue that most of us would agree on is just the mid card titles and the tag team titles, which have always been a concern basically since they were introduced. It feels like the women's tag titles are going to be, and they should be, put on Liv and Raquel. But we need to see more girls from NXT involved, because there are more like legitimate women tag teams in NXT as opposed to on the main roster. The women's mid card titles, they need to be used. Otherwise, what was the point of introducing them? If all you're gonna do is like, oh, Lyra's in the audience again tonight. Are we serious right now? We're supposed to think that
She's
it's like a big deal that she was the first women's intercontinental champion, and then you have her like chilling watching Raw from the audience? Really? Like, as great as Chelsea Green is, we need to see her actually being a
oh
champion too.
Chelsea Green is doing the absolute most with
Yeah.
what she's been given.
Mm-hmm.
That you exactly what we're saying about Lyra, how it doesn't feel important because she's not defending and all that. Chelsea is doing that with how she's presenting herself, the gear, having Piper Niven as Secret Service. It's top
Mm-hmm.
notch shit.
Yeah, but I just think they need to take more time and effort into the women's divisions in general. I think that to an extent Triple H has obviously done better in that regard than Vince McMahon, but I think that they're still so far behind where they could be. I mean, they're even, if we're talking about Raw and SmackDown, they're so far behind NXT when it
No,
comes to the women.
I said it. They're so far behind.
They had like a PLE, like NXT's version of a PLE, and it was like 3 of the 4 matches were women, and the women main evented. What are we like? Raw and SmackDown are nowhere near that. Like, we were just talking about how the women are not going to main event Mania. That's depending on what they do this year for NXT. There's an argument to probably be made that a women's match will main event Stand and Deliver. You know, you could say that in February. You can't really say, oh, there's a possibility that this women's match is going to main event Mania right now. So
yeah,
that shows you just how much more work they need to do.
As much as I do love Big Dick Starks, him versus Obafemi, but over him versus Obafemi should not main event over Julia versus Jordan Grace. I'm just spitting facts here.
Yeah.
And that just you can make an argument too that the WWE should be doing some sort of women's show on YouTube.
I know.
Like, that's where you showcase the mid-card champion. And it sounds, I don't know, it sounds like too much because they're already taking off live events. And I don't want to mimic the Tony Khan method. But bookings back-to-back tapings, I mean, like, you could do that for the women too. They're already there. You know, all you got to do is just change the aprons and make it look a little different. Where you could do something like that where it's 2 matches, maybe 2 or 3 matches, one of them being a quick one. And all your backstage stuff could be pre-taped. So there's your show. And it's only an hour or so more than added onto a live show. You already have Raw being basically 2.5 hours already, and fans before, when it was on USA, were expected 3. You have SmackDown for 3 hours. Why don't you just have them get there early for a women's taping? I mean, what the hell is Main Event doing? Main Event is just a name of the dark match segment now.
I know.
So what's the point? Like, just why don't you do something with it instead of just having it be for the fans and use it in a multifaceted way, where you take Main Event out of the picture, you put a women's only show on there, you get 2 matches, and then the whole other stuff is backstage segments that you could pre-tape either that day or days prior. Doesn't matter.
And we kind of have talked about this before too, about them doing like a 1-hour women's show or something like that. But
it doesn't need to be long. It's on YouTube.
No.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, and it can be NXT also. You know?
You do tapings in NXT, exactly. Like, the matches don't have to be at the same place. And this is where I can sense myself getting a little off and trying to make it work, but like, you could still do it where you could have one match be at a Raw taping, another match be at a SmackDown taping, and then 2 more matches be at NXT Performance Center. You just change the apron.
Yeah.
You do camera cuts a little bit closer, or darken the lights so it all has the same aesthetic in a sense. And then you just do pre-taped stuff beforehand to fill the other time that you want to. Say if you want like a 2-hour show or an hour and a half, you just do the other 45 to 30 to 45 minutes as pre-taped or backstage stuff. It's there. You have the talent to do it. You just need the producers to do it and the idea guy to come up with the idea.
Yeah.
So,